Rain fell in soft sheets across the jagged cliffs of Athens' outer rim, casting silver ripples across the ocean-like sky. Somewhere above those clouds, a human boy, barely 19, hurtled toward a fate he couldn't begin to imagine. His name was Jace Walker. A scholarship kid. A mechanic's son from Earth. A nobody. And in less than an hour, he'd inherit a wife. An alien wife. A powerful one. And she wanted nothing to do with him. The pod jolted violently as it broke through the planet's upper atmosphere. Jace gripped the side rails, his knuckles white. The shuttle wasn't designed for comfort. Just drop-offs. Quick insertions into situations you didn't come back from. His mission had no return ticket. They called it the exchange. 12 humans had been drafted, really, to participate in a high-level diplomatic program with the Caesari Dominion, a warrior race of matriarchs known for two things, beauty and brutality. Jace had been picked because he matched some ridiculous genetic compatibility matrix. And now, he was headed to be bonded to one of their high-blood elite. Not just any warrior, either. The Warborn. Her name was Commander Tivarara. She was the only daughter of the High Matron of Caesari. 7 feet tall. Skin the color of sapphire night. A mind trained in strategy, politics, and war. And she hated humans. The moment he stepped out of the shuttle and saw her, his stomach dropped. Not because she was terrifying, though she absolutely was, but because she looked like a goddess sculpted from ice and flame. Her golden hair framed a face so fiercely beautiful it was hard to look directly at her. Her eyes, glowing amber, narrowed as she assessed him. "This is a mistake," she said in Galactic common. Jace blinked. "Nice to meet you too." She turned and walked away. That was their wedding ceremony. The next days were a blur of protocol, language implants, and whispered warnings. The Caesari weren't thrilled about the treaty. This arrangement, this merging of bloodlines, was a desperate move to prevent war. The Dominion needed Earth's tech. Earth needed Caesari protection from Outer Rim raiders. The bonds were the price. But no one said the bonding process would hurt. On the third night, Jace was summoned to Tivarara's private quarters. The guards said nothing, just pushed him through. Inside, the room pulsed with heat and scent sharp like ozone and something floral. Tivarara stood in front of a pool, wearing ceremonial armor over her glowing skin. Not much was left to the imagination. She stared at him like he was a puzzle that didn't fit. "I won't claim you," she said, her voice low. "I didn't ask to be claimed," he shot back, trying to keep his voice steady. That got a reaction. She turned, studying him. "You speak boldly. Most humans cower." "I'm not most humans." Tivarara stepped closer, her eyes scanning his forearms. "You survived the plasma rites." "Yeah." It wasn't exactly a spa day. She reached out, brushing her fingers against the burn scars left by the ritual bonding cuffs. Jace didn't flinch. "You have more steel than they told me. No offense, but I'm not here for your approval. I just want to get through this without being killed." For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, without warning, she turned and activated a glyph on the wall. The room shimmered. "Step forward," she commanded. Jace hesitated, then obeyed. As he stepped into the circle, he felt a tingling up his spine. Then heat. Then a sharp, twisting pulse through his chest. He gasped. The bond had activated. And it went both ways. After that night, everything changed. Jace began seeing things. Flashes of emotion that weren't his. Words spoken in a tongue he hadn't learned. Visions of battles, of blood and honor. And Tivarara? She began acting differently too. Less cold. Still distant, but watchful. He wasn't supposed to be able to influence her. The Caesari bond was meant to dominate. But with Jace, something was off. The elders whispered about anomalies. Forbidden pairings. Ancient prophecies. Jace didn't care about prophecies. He just wanted out. But escape wasn't an option. Not anymore. Not after the attack. It happened during a state feast. One moment, Jace was awkwardly sipping some glowing drink that smelled like pine and cinnamon. The next, alarms blared and the palace shook. Raiders. Not from Earth, not from Kesari, but something worse. Something older. Everyone scattered. Tivarara grabbed him by the wrist and pulled him down a side corridor. You stay behind me, she barked. Not a problem, he yelled. Explosions rocked the lower levels. Smoke and screams filled the air. Jace was no soldier, but he'd spent years fixing junk freighters. He recognized power lines, structural flaws. As they moved through the chaos, he started pointing out safe paths. Twice, his instincts saved them. Finally, they reached the Hall of Ashes, where the Dominion's ancestral weapons were kept. Tivarara activated a console, retrieving a gleaming spear with radiant veins of light. Then she turned to him and handed him a blade. This is more than diplomacy now, she said. You fight, or you die. Jace gripped the hilt. It vibrated in his hand, recognizing him. Something ancient had been awakened. Not just in the palace, but in him. And for the first time since he'd landed on this forsaken planet, Jace didn't feel like a visitor. He felt like a fuse. And the whole galaxy was about to burn. The moment Jace raised the alien blade, something primal flickered in the air. Not fear, something worse. Recognition. One of the raiders snarled in an inhuman tongue and backed away. What's wrong with them? He asked, panting. Tivarara didn't answer. Her amber eyes locked onto the nearest attacker, then she lunged with the force of a falling star. Her spear tore through enemy armor like it was paper. But even as she fought, her gaze kept flicking back to him. They weren't just trying to sack the palace. They were hunting him. By the time the smoke cleared and the surviving attackers had retreated into orbit, the palace grounds looked like a war zone. Bodies smoldered. Structures buckled. And the silence afterward was somehow louder than the chaos. Tivarara stood with one hand on a cracked pillar, blood streaking her cheek. Not hers. Her eyes scanned the ruin. They came for you, she said quietly. Jace dropped the blade. His hand trembled. Why me? I'm no one. No, she said slowly. You're not. That night, she summoned the Elder Matron Council. Even they looked shaken. Tivarara recounted everything, the attacker's strange behavior, the weapon recognizing Jace, the anomalies in the bonding. One of the elders finally spoke. There is an old myth. Before the Dominion, before even the first Mother Throne. A seed. A weapon sealed inside human bloodlines. Lost in time. Tivarara's voice was quiet but deadly. You think he's the seed bearer? I think, said the elder, you're not just married to a boy. You're bonded to something that could end or save us all. The next days were chaos wrapped in protocol. Tivarara and Jace were assigned a guardian task force. Jace wasn't allowed to walk outside the palace alone. But that didn't stop the visions. He started seeing things again, vivid scenes from other lives. Not memories. More like echoes. Always the same location. A place underground, lit by blue fire. A lock. A door. A phrase in a language he shouldn't know. Every time he said it aloud, the walls trembled. And he wasn't the only one changing. Tivarara's demeanor shifted. She stopped looking at him like a nuisance. She started studying him. Training with him. Testing him. She never said it aloud, but Jace could tell she was scared. Not of him, but of what he might become. One night, during weapons drill, she knocked him flat on his back. You hesitate, she said, standing over him. I'm human. We process emotions, remember? She offered a hand, pulling him up. You won't survive this war unless you become more than that. Maybe I don't want to become more. Her expression darkened. You already are. You just haven't figured it out yet. That night, Jace couldn't sleep. The visions had sharpened. Now he wasn't just seeing a door, he felt what lay beyond it. Power. Hunger. Something ancient. In the dream, he reached for it. In real life, he woke up glowing. His veins shimmered with the same blue fire from his dreams. When he stumbled out of bed, the entire wall where his hand had rested was scorched. He tried to hide it, but it was too late. Tivarara saw the burns. Do you remember anything? She asked, her voice tight. He nodded. A name. Not mine. Something older. Something alive. She exhaled slowly. You need to come with me. They rode out the next morning, far from the palace. Past the high cliffs and silver plains, to a place few knew existed, the Tomb of Flame. The Caesari believed it was a holy site. Forbidden. But the guards at the gate stepped aside the moment they saw Jace. Inside, the temperature dropped. The deeper they went, the more the air thrummed. Like the planet itself was holding its breath. Finally, they reached a chamber pulsing with symbols. A door like in his dreams. I've seen this, Jace whispered. Tivarara nodded. Then open it. He stepped forward. The symbols responded to his presence, flaring bright. One by one, they lit in sequence until the door split open. Inside, no treasure. No throne. Just a pedestal. A relic. A second blade. It hovered, humming with energy. The moment Jace touched it, the tomb shook. His mind flooded with memories, not his own, warriors from forgotten eras, screaming stars, a binding oath. And then, a voice, you are the key. He collapsed. When he woke, Tivarara knelt beside him. What did you see? She asked. Jace stared at the blade now resting beside him. I saw what's coming. And it's not raiders. It's something worse. Something old enough to have waited through empires. Tivarara's face was unreadable. Then we train harder. He met her gaze. You don't have to stay with me. I didn't ask for any of this. Her jaw clenched. Neither did I. But here we are. There was something in her eyes now. Not affection, but understanding. Maybe even respect. She stood and offered him her hand again. This time, he took it without hesitation. Because if he was the key to something ancient, then she was the only one who could help him wield it. Together, they left the tomb. And behind them, the relic glowed. Awakened. Jace had never felt power like this before. The relic blade whispered to him now, never with words, but with sensations, instinct, drive. It pulsed when danger neared. It flared when he hesitated. Sometimes it hummed softly while he slept, like a lullaby from something long dead, or worse, long dreaming. Tivarara didn't speak much during their return to the capital. But her presence had changed. She no longer walked ahead of him, no longer saw him as just an assignment. She stayed at his side. As they entered the gates, both of them knew it would never be the same. The Dominion was already shifting. Rumors spread like solar flares of a human who'd opened the Tomb of Flame, of a blade that hadn't sung in centuries, of visions tied to the old war gods. And something darker stirred. 2 days later, the visions started bleeding into reality. Jace was in the middle of tactical training with Tivarara when he froze mid-swing. The air shimmered around him. Suddenly he wasn't in the training courtyard anymore. He was surrounded by darkness. Stars' capes stretched across infinity, but the void felt hungry. And then he saw it. A shape. Immense. Drifting. Not dead. Sleeping. A creature built of shadow and rage, bound in chains of burning light. Its eye opened, just one, and it stared directly into him. He screamed. He woke up on the floor of the courtyard, gasping. Tivarara was crouched beside him. Guards stood at a distance, uncertain. What did you see? She asked, gripping his arm. I don't know. It wasn't a dream. It saw me. Tivarara's face darkened. Then we have less time than I thought. She pulled him to his feet. Come. You need to meet someone. They traveled to a hidden archive beneath the capital. A place even most royals weren't allowed to enter. Ancient scrolls, stasis-bound tomes, and holographic recordings from the time before the Caesari ever sailed the stars. Inside, an old scholar named Siruan waited. His body was frail, but his eyes burned bright with knowledge. The void-bound, he rasped, after Jace described the vision. That's what you saw. He hobbled to a floating console and activated a projection. A mural of war. Massive creatures devouring galaxies. Caesari warriors dying in waves. And then, a figure of light and shadow holding a blade like Jace's, sealing the creatures away. They were imprisoned. All of them. But if the relic responded to you, that means the seals are weakening. You're not just bonded to Tivarara. You're bonded to the lock itself. Jace shook his head. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does, Siruan said. But destiny doesn't wait for permission. As the days passed, Jace's power grew stronger but harder to control. He could see through time in flashes. Hear things before they were spoken. Touch thoughts not his own. Once, he shouted during a strategy meeting and shattered the table. The guards reached for their weapons until Tivarara stepped between them. Stand down, she ordered. He is not our enemy. But the council wasn't so forgiving. The High Matron herself summoned them. The chamber was vast and cold. Crystal thrones lined the circular walls. Tivarara bowed, but Jace didn't. He stood straight, hands clenched. The High Matron's voice echoed. Human. You have brought both fear and fire to our house. Why should we let you remain bonded to my daughter? Jace looked around. Because whatever's coming won't stop at your walls. And I didn't choose this bond. Neither did she. But we're in it now. The matron tilted her head. Would you die for her? Jace didn't blink. Without hesitation. Tivarara looked at him sharply. He wasn't lying. The matron rose slowly. Then I suggest you live for her instead. That night, Tivarara approached him on the palace terrace. The moons hung low, casting silver over the gardens. You didn't have to say that, she said. I meant it. She studied him, for once unsure. I was trained never to depend on anyone. Not even blood. But you're different. You make everything unstable. I'm not trying to, he said. I just don't want to run anymore. There was silence between them, not awkward, just honest. Then she took his hand. No commands. No ritual. Just a touch. And in that moment, something shifted between them. The bond pulsed, not with power, but with clarity. With choice. She didn't need to say anything. He already knew. But peace didn't last long. Scouts returned with reports. A tear had opened near the outer moons. A rift. And something was coming through it. Ships dead on arrival. Matter warped. Gravity turned inside out. The voidbound were waking. Tivarara gathered her generals. Jace sat at her side, no longer a guest, no longer a curiosity, but something closer to a weapon, or perhaps, a partner. Their plan was simple. Desperate. They would intercept the rift before the creatures could gain full form. Strike hard. Strike first. Tivarara and Jace would lead the charge. He gripped the relic blade. It vibrated with anticipation. With purpose. You're not scared? She asked him as the dropship loaded. I'm terrified, he said honestly. But I trust you. Her hand brushed his. Then let's make them fear us. As the ship roared into orbit, Jace felt the fire awaken again in his veins. And deep inside the rift, the ancient eye opened wider. The battlefield wasn't what Jace expected. It wasn't a planet, or a ship. It was a fracture in space itself, like a wound carved open across the stars. The rift churned with energy and silence, pulling light inward and bending reality. No sound, no gravity, no up or down. Just them, and it. Tivarara stood at his side, her spear crackling with plasma, her posture like stone. Behind them, a fleet of Kaysari dreadnoughts floated in formation. The entire Dominion waited. Jace didn't wait. He stepped forward. The relic blade in his hand hummed louder than ever. It knew. He knew. This was the moment everything had built toward. A shape emerged from the rift. Massive. Wrong. It didn't walk, it leaked forward, dragging parts of other dimensions with it. Dozens of eyes blinked out of sync across its surface. A maw opened, swallowing stars. The voidbound had come. And it knew his name. The first strike wasn't physical. The creature launched waves of thought, pure despair, rage, madness. Jace buckled. His mind tore sideways, flooded with every fear, every doubt. He saw Earth burning. He saw Tivarara dead. He saw himself alone in the dark, screaming. But then, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Tivarara. I am here, she said. Just 3 words. It was enough. Jace rose. Light burst from the blade, cutting through the darkness. The memories, the chains, shattered. He struck. The fight wasn't fair. It wasn't clean. It was ancient versus newborn. Chaos against will. The creature lashed out, twisting metal, snapping ships like twigs. Caesari forces burned in orbit, trying to contain its reach. But every time it turned toward the fleet, Jace pulled it back. Every blow redirected. Every cry echoed through him. He was the link now. The beacon. The fuse. And Tivarara never left his side. Together, they dove into the rift. Inside was silence. No stars. No up. Just essence. They floated in the core of the creature's being. It didn't roar. It wept. A voice filled their minds, not words, but grief. An apology. It wasn't evil. It was lost. Created to protect, then forgotten. Left in the dark for so long, it forgot how to feel anything but hunger. And now, it simply wanted to end. Jace didn't raise the blade. He closed his eyes, and opened the bond. Memories rushed between them, his, Tivarara's, Earth's oceans, Caesari stars, laughter, love, war, loss. The blade pulsed one last time. And the creature let go. The rift sealed. They awoke on the flagship, bodies weak, the bond between them thrumming like a quiet flame. The war was over. Not won, but ended because they had chosen understanding over destruction. The Dominion honored them. The High Matron wept as she knelt before her daughter and her unexpected son-in-law. And the galaxy shifted. Not overnight. But word spread. Of a human boy who changed the fate of empires. Of a warrior queen who learned to trust what she feared. And of a bond, born not from duty, but from choice. Months passed. The palace stood taller. The stars seemed brighter. One night, beneath the twin moons, Jace sat with Tivarara near the water gardens. The scars on his arms had faded, but he traced them anyway. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, "how different it all could have been?" She looked at him, her golden hair catching the starlight. "Every day. But we're still here," he said. "We are," she agreed. He reached for her hand. "Thank you. For not walking away." "You wouldn't let me," she said with a smirk. They laughed, together, unburdened. And the galaxy turned once more. Moral. Strength isn't just born from power, it's born from partnership. We fear what we don't understand. But sometimes, the key to saving everything is choosing to understand first. Peace is never given. It's made one choice at a time.